The man overheard a conversation between his wife and two daughters outside the door. Their discussion revolved around the father's controlling nature, as he forbade them from interacting with any men. To escape his oppressive control, Mary planned to leave the house on her 18th birthday. However, her father, standing outside the door, heard every word clearly. Quietly, he made his way to the basement, his mind torn with conflicting emotions. But as soon as he thought about his daughter leaving him, he made up his mind. Without hesitation, he pushed aside a nearby bookshelf, revealing a hidden door. An evil plan began to form in his mind. Not long after, Jack put his plan into action. One day, he waited for his wife to go grocery shopping and quickly returned home. He found Mary on the phone with her boyfriend and interrupted her, asking for her help to carry a box. Mary, unsuspecting, asked if she could attend a friend's party later that evening. To her surprise, Jack agreed without hesitation. Just as she was feeling excited, Jack opened the hidden door behind the bookshelf. Mary stared in disbelief and asked him what this place was. Jack lied, saying it used to be an air raid shelter, but that he had made some modifications to it. In the next moment, he shoved Mary inside and locked her in. At first, Mary didn't understand what was happening, but Jack left without explaining anything. This plan had been long in the making, and what awaited Mary was nothing short of a nightmare. Inside the room, all of Mary's personal belongings were already neatly placed. She tried entering the password to unlock the door, but no matter how many combinations she attempted, it wouldn't open. Worse, the system was designed to cut off the power supply after 3 failed attempts. Desperate, she rummaged through a box and found a small light, then screamed for help through the ventilation ducts. But Jack had already sealed the vents, ensuring no sound could escape. By evening, Mary had been missing for an entire day, and the family was frantic with worry. Everyone except Jack, who sat calmly on the couch, showing no concern at all. By the second day, Mary was exhausted but kept trying to crack the code. Yet, every attempt failed, and with no power, even breathing became a struggle. By the 4th day, Mary, now desperate, waited for Jack to enter the room. As soon as he opened the door, she hid behind it and used all her strength to shove him aside. She bolted toward the exit, her heart racing with hope. But to her horror, she discovered that beyond the first door was yet another thick, reinforced door, blocking her escape. The girl suddenly disappeared without a trace. However, her father told the police that his daughter had talked about wanting to travel the world. He claimed to have overheard her saying this outside her room, and her mother had also been present at the time. Without any concrete evidence, the police concluded that Mary had simply run away from home. They assured the family that they would notify them immediately if there was any news. Meanwhile, Mary was already in complete despair. She screamed desperately for help, but it was all in vain. One day, while Jack was mowing the lawn in the front yard, Mary's boyfriend suddenly showed up. Jack recognized him instantly. When the boyfriend asked about Mary's whereabouts, Jack coldly replied that Mary had a new boyfriend and had run away with him. Heartbroken, the boyfriend had no choice but to leave in disappointment. A year passed, and Mary's belly had grown noticeably larger. One day, she suddenly realized her water had broken. Panicked and unsure of what to do, she relied on a pregnancy book nearby to guide her breathing and calm herself. Alone and with no one to help, she endured the ordeal in silence and eventually gave birth to her first child. Jack only provided her with some basic supplies afterward. Among them, Mary noticed a dessert knife, but by this point, she had lost all hope and didn't dare to act against Jack. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. Mary's mother was still heartbroken over her daughter's disappearance, unable to find any clues. Meanwhile, life in the basement continued as if it were a twisted version of a normal family. Mary's daughter had grown older, and because Mary had behaved well and even given birth to a second child, Jack decided to reward her and her children with a television. 7 years had passed. Mary's second child was now growing up, and Mary had gradually adapted to life in the basement. Despite being confined to a space less than 30 square meters, the three of them played together as if their lives were normal. One day, Jack revealed that he had received a pay cut. Most of his salary was being spent on maintaining the basement, which led to a heated argument with his wife. In his frustration, Jack stormed out, accidentally leaving the key to the basement behind. This scene didn't go unnoticed. Mary's younger sister saw everything. Suspecting that her sister might have been hidden in the basement all along, she took the key and made her way down, determined to uncover the truth.
While eating dinner, the man noticed something unsettling. The waitress serving him had bruises all over her arms. Although the woman tried her best to hide them, her evasive gaze gave Jack a bad feeling. Sure enough, not long after, a car pulled up outside. A man stormed into the restaurant aggressively and immediately started laying his hands on the waitress. From their heated argument, it became clear that Carl was the waitress's ex-husband, and the two were fighting over custody of their child. As Carl was about to get physical, Jack quickly intervened to stop him. Enraged, Carl approached Jack and demanded to know why he was meddling in their business. But Jack remained unfazed and showed no reaction, which only infuriated Carl further. Furious, Carl grabbed Jack's food and began shoving large bites into his mouth. After finishing, he spitefully spit onto the table. Still, Jack didn't get angry, which seemed to give Carl a sense of satisfaction. He became even more brazen, picking up a small knife and threatening Jack to eat the food he had just spit on. At that moment, Jack calmly removed his glasses. He told Carl that the knife in his hand was useless, and warned him that if he dared to act recklessly, his ex-wife, who was standing nearby, would serve as a witness. Jack made it clear that Carl had only one option left: to leave immediately, because if he stayed any longer, Jack would report him to the authorities. Seeing Jack's unwavering confidence, Carl began to hesitate. He didn't want to risk being caught in such a public place. After a moment of deliberation, he muttered an excuse and left the restaurant. Mary, who had been watching the entire exchange, was deeply impressed by Jack's composure and courage. Once her ex-husband was gone, she hurried over to prepare another steak for Jack. Little did she know, this seemingly small gesture would almost cost her life. After finishing his meal, Jack quickly headed to his car, where he placed a roll of duct tape into the glove compartment. He then drove off without hesitation. However, as he continued down the road, he suddenly noticed a car following him closely from behind. The man opened the trunk, and inside was a woman trapped and bound. It turned out that the man was a notorious town psychopath who had harmed multiple women before. However, this time things didn't go as planned, as a sudden snowstorm had forced him to take risks for survival. After realizing that Jack had left the car, Mary, who was in the trunk, began frantically tearing at the tape on her wrists. She managed to free herself and crawled through the back seat to escape the trunk. Once out of the car, she wasted no time and started running as fast as she could. But the snowstorm grew fiercer, and the wind made it impossible for her to keep her eyes open. Realizing she could freeze to death out there, Mary had no choice but to return to the car. Meanwhile, Jack was wandering through the storm, trying to find a way out. Unfortunately, he stepped into a hunter's animal trap, and the sharp metal clamped down on his leg. Injured and in pain, he dragged his wounded leg as he slowly made his way back toward the car. Inside the car, Mary stumbled upon a bottle of an unknown liquid. At that moment, memories of how she ended up there began flooding back to her. Just as she was processing this, Jack finally made it back to the car, struggling from the pain. His priority now was to treat his wound, knowing that if it became infected, things would only get worse. But as Jack turned to grab his tools, he noticed something alarming. The glove box in the front seat had been opened. Instantly, Jack realized something was wrong. Checking through the rearview mirror, he confirmed that someone had tampered with it. Slowly, he lowered his right hand, reaching for a small knife he had placed nearby. The air grew tense, with Jack's eyes locked on the mirror, ready to defend himself at any moment. Meanwhile, Mary quietly opened the bottle of unknown liquid she'd found. Within seconds, Jack collapsed and lost consciousness. When he woke up, he discovered that Mary had tied him to the steering wheel with duct tape. She began interrogating him, demanding to know where they were, but Jack claimed he didn't know, insisting that if they didn't get help soon, both of them would freeze to death. Mary pressed him further, asking how many women he had harmed. Jack swore this was his first time doing something like this. However, when she asked why he had kidnapped her specifically, he refused to answer. Night had fallen, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. Suddenly, Mary announced that she needed to use the bathroom.
A couple managed to buy a billionaire named Carl's $50 million mansion without spending a single penny. Carl wasn't interested in money. Instead, he had one condition for the deal. The couple had to promise never to open the cellar in the backyard. If they ever did, the house would no longer belong to them and would have to be returned. Faced with such an irresistible offer, the couple thought Carl was joking, but Carl gave no further explanation. Instead, he simply suggested they stay the night in the mansion, saying it was too late to leave. The next morning, the couple woke up to find that Carl had disappeared. On the table, there was a sales contract for the house, and the terms were exactly as Carl had stated the night before. Curious, the couple went to the backyard and found a locked cellar. Jack couldn't believe something so good could come without a catch. Was there something terrifying hidden in the cellar? While he was still suspicious, Carl's real estate agent, Mary, showed up. She congratulated the couple on their new home and presented the final transfer documents for them to sign. Jack remained cautious, but Anna was completely enchanted by the mansion. The house was fully furnished, ready to move in, and required no additional costs. Anna didn't care if it was a trap. She was willing to take the risk. After all, Carl was a wealthy man. What could he possibly want from them? Anna couldn't think of anything valuable enough about their lives that Carl might be after. After much persuasion from his wife, Jack finally gave in and signed the paperwork. The couple officially became the legal owners of the mansion. However, the moment they moved in, strange things began to happen. One night, Jack noticed a drunken man standing outside the house. The stranger looked sorrowful, and as soon as he opened his mouth, warned Jack to burn the house down before it was too late. Jack was baffled, but the man grew more serious and insisted, saying, "This house isn't worth it. It's going to destroy you." Without explaining further, the drunk man walked away, leaving Jack deeply unsettled. Today was the day Jack hosted a housewarming party, but an unexpected guest arrived, a blonde woman. Jack's expression immediately changed. The reason? The two had once been lovers. After Jack's wife had a miscarriage, he had cut off all contact with Wendy. Now her sudden appearance put him on edge. Jack pulled Wendy aside into a quiet corner and asked why she was there. Wendy innocently explained that a mutual friend had invited her. Jack wanted to press her further, but he was interrupted by his wife's anxious call. When Jack returned to the front of the house, he saw a man standing on the lawn holding a keg of alcohol. Jack approached him to ask what he was doing, but the man, with a serious expression, told Jack to burn the house down immediately. Without waiting for a response, the man turned and walked away, leaving Jack standing there, completely confused. The next day, Jack went to work only to discover that Wendy had reported him to their boss for sexual harassment. As a result, Jack was suspended from his job. Feeling devastated, Jack returned home but couldn't bring himself to tell his wife the truth. Instead, he sat in the backyard drinking alone. As his eyes wandered, they landed on the cellar. He suddenly remembered the drunken man's warning from the night before. To his surprise, the man's words seemed to be coming true. Jack's curiosity about what might be hidden in the cellar began to grow. However, opening the cellar would mean losing the house, and he knew his wife would never agree to it. So Jack waited until his wife went out, then grabbed a crowbar and attempted to pry open one side of the cellar door for a peek. Unfortunately, he didn't see anything, except his hand getting injured in this process. Frustrated, Jack realized brute force wasn't going to work. Determined to uncover the secret, Jack decided to track down the house's floor plan. The architect quickly produced the blueprints and handed them to Jack. The architect mentioned that the previous owner, Tony, had requested the same floor plan for his own research not long ago, but Tony had never come back to pick it up. Jack was stunned. Previous owner? Wasn't the house's owner named Carl?